It is. It is. What's up, chat? We are back for the first time. Maybe not a long time. I don't know. Today we're gonna be talking about Euphoria. I finally finished Euphoria season 3. And I have thoughts, I have opinions. So let's do a brain dump. Alright, let's jump right into it, man. First things first. Before this season even came out, y'all didn't know there was controversy. Right? Difference in opinions, people not feeling good about what's going on, people leaving the project, not coming back. One of the notable ones for me was Storm Reed not coming back. So that whole storyline with Rue and her little sister, not going to be a real thing. Outside of, what could have been actively told in the story is going to be probably like just some flashbacks here and there or whatever, like, dreams. But, nothing crazy happened in the sense of like scandal per se. It was just more so like just, your regular creative differences. And just, plenty of other things out there that if you haven't seen already, you could probably find very easily. Because before this joint even came out, people were already saying it wasn't gonna be good. Right? But they pushed through, they finished the season, they released it, and now we're here. And I will say that I'm in a weird spot because is the show bad? Like, is the season just straight up like terrible quality, bad TV, whatever? I don't think so. I don't think it's that bad, but it's a completely different show. With the additions of characters like Alamo Brown and just the whole Lori arc, adding such a monkey's wrench into just what Rue had going on after, the whole events of season 2, and now there's a time skip. So now, like, these teenagers that we knew that were just going through the nothing regular about this show, but just going through the angst of growing up and having to deal with life and just like, just trying to make it, right? There's a time jump. So now they grown essentially, and they making grown up decisions, you know what I'm saying? And things just got too real too fast, where I think honestly, like, where the show used to be about like the just like the mindset of not only just an addict, but like there's different forms and levels of addiction that aren't necessarily drugs. Sometimes it's attention, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes it's, whatever. I'm not going to do a whole psychology degree for y'all. I don't know. But essentially what I'm saying is that there is more of a subtleness and like craft to the kind of story that they were telling versus what season 3 ended up looking like from what I had seen from the trailer before I even watched the season. Was just like, you know what? We just gonna turn everything up to 11. We're gonna keep you entertained, but I feel like the soul and the core of the show that we got to see through Rue, Jules, what's her name? Oh man, Cassie, and just the different relationships in between, whether it's platonic or romantic, and just the drug game, stuff like that, like in battling addiction and the different steps that people go through, the setbacks, all that, right? To, guns and explosions. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'll say it's a tone shift, because I feel like in the sense that, how long can you keep the show going? I feel like it was more like they made the decision to go out with a bang versus like continue to telling a very complex story within the realms of like still being teenagers and still not being able to do certain stuff without, having to kind of just like, like they had to get out of high school. You know what I'm saying? And it was like that time period. The show should have probably just ended versus like adding another season 3. Now you have to make up a lot more just, regular TV show magic that sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I feel like for this series, I enjoyed the, you know, Alamo Brown arc. Uh I enjoyed the just, you know, following Rue through this whole scenario. But everything else, I just felt like everybody else got the short end of the stick, in the sense of like we start off with like the normal narration of everything, you know, Rue breaking down where everybody's at. Once we figure out where everybody stands, that's kind of where the story stops and the, you know, antics begin. And it's all about just like how many crazy situations can we put Rue in to make for these like epic, but also like, does this really make sense? You know, what do you call them? Outtakes, or like the last scene of a the last season of an episode. Uh, so that it makes you want to wait for the next one and then the next one and the next one. But like, there's just certain things that they did in this season that I just don't really rock with. I don't think it was tasteful. Um, like, you know, I understand it from like a humanistic side of things, but when you know the reality of certain things, it just like, to me, it just didn't sit right. So like, you know, having a scene of Fez breaking out of jail, or having Rue have a whole conversation with him on the phone, never hear his voice, but we're supposed to believe that that's him on the other line, knowing what happened in real life. I don't know. I don't know how you feel about that. Me personally, not a fan of it. You know what I'm saying? Not a fan. Even just the way that Youngest was going out was super sad in his joint as well. But I just feel like at every moment, at every turn, they just said, how can we make this more crazy, instead of like getting to the core of like really following the characters. I feel like the format of the show kind of changed, and that's why I didn't really bang with it. In the, you know, just like, I still think it was a quality made show, but I just don't like the approach that they took with this one, because there's not a lot, like where there's not a lot of answers, they found some, especially the way that the show ended, where basically everybody got the bad ending, regardless of like how, you know, cute or not cute, cute's not the right word, but regardless of how you try to romanticize something like that, and having you know, Ali go full commando against Alamo, after everything we done seen, I was just like, bro, this just turned into a different show. It was still cool to watch, but like, it was just not, it was not Euphoria anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like they lost the, you know, they lost the meaning of the word. And this season, it was just like, you know, we still got to see what different people's addictions look like, or just like, you know, their worldview and how they framed it based on their backstories, whether it was like full seasons of Alamo, or full episodes of Alamo or Ali set in the past, just to, you know, get a better gauge of the character that you see today, who is a lot more, speaking especially with Alamo, is a lot more animated, I'll say. Um, and then they just kind of make unilateral decisions that I'm just like, yo, this does not make sense. It just didn't make sense. So is it a terrible watch? I don't think it's a terrible watch, but it's just not a good show. It wasn't it wasn't good, for like a net positive for Euphoria to me. And I think for me, my favorite storyline out of all of them was probably one of the more, you know, not so in your face ones, and that was seeing Maddie kind of just work her way up in a sense, and then see the bind that she got put in. It's just like, dang, like, you know, play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. I think Nate went out the saddest though. Like, Nate had the worst luck of all time, and I'm not saying that, like, you know, I'm not gonna sit here and try to justify the way he went out, or all the stuff that he went through, but like just Nate's whole storyline in general, I just felt like was there to like fill in the gaps of everything else because he couldn't actively be a part of the story anymore outside of just name and face. And then because the real stars of the show is, you know, Zendaya and Sydney Sweeney, and yeah, and then Alamo. I think those are the people I felt like was on screen the most. Alamo not so much, but Alamo had a whole arc to himself, and a whole different situation. But you know, I feel like they stuck to what they felt like works in other shows, and it kind of just backfired in the sense of like losing the just losing the heart of it, bro. You know, and I'm not gonna sit here and act like I had the solutions of what they could have did to make this show better, the last season better. But if they had just left it, you know, with the outro that we got, I feel like it would have like just a better would have a better, like, I don't know what I'm trying to say. The word I'm trying to say is like, it's like send off, but it's not send off. It's like through time it will live better. What am I trying to say? I don't know. Like, I feel like people would have gone back to Euphoria if they had. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that if the people would have gone back to Euphoria if they had just left it at 2 seasons. But with the adding of the 3rd season, where the show just went completely left, then it's like the rewatchability to it. I don't know how it's going to stand the test of time. That's what I was trying to say. So overall, like I still enjoyed watching it for the most part, but I just don't think it was that good. I honestly don't think it was that good. And that's why I'm doing a brain dump on it, because it's not necessarily something I want to do a full on review for. But I figured I'd just come on here and talk about it because, you know, it was just like, dang, like one of my biggest videos on this channel was a Euphoria video. So it's just like, you know, I might as well close the chapter on this joint. And I did, I believe I did give it let me see what the G-File score was for it before we get out of here. I did give it I gave it a 6, bro. I gave it a 6 out of 10 G-File score. So, you know, not great, but it's not like they just lost the plot, bro. They honestly just lost the plot. And they made one that was just way more like epic, I guess. You know? But I just don't hear nobody talking about Euphoria like that anymore anyway. So, you know, it started off on a bad foot, and I feel like they try to make the best out of it, but, you know, I feel like everybody's just trying to move on at this point. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Let me know how y'all feel about it in the comment section below. Did Euphoria lose the plot, or, you know, was this his best season yet? I don't know how many people are going to say that. Like, I don't know how many people are going to say that, but let me know. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, and I'll see y'all in the next brain dump.